let's just get right down to it. You're a Democrat. You were elected twice in a state that is traditionally Republican. A lot of people think that that is sort of a signal that you can sort of sway voters sort of across the country. And I'm just wondering, is the propensity for what voters did twice in Montana, does that actually translate to the other, 21 plus red states?
Well, I think it does, in as much as I was the only Democrat actually in the country to win a statewide reelection, a state where Trump won. He took Montana by 20, I won by 4. 25 to 30% of my voters voted for Donald Trump. And it wasn't by changing the values that I hold. At the end of the day, this election's about math. If we can't capture 270 electoral votes, if we can't win back places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, we're not going to win this election. As somebody off the coasts, as somebody that's governed, which used to matter, as we talk about, executive experience, and as somebody that's won in a state where folks voted for Donald Trump, I think I do have something really unique in this field.
Obviously, as Romaine mentioned, you're not making the debate tomorrow night. Obviously, this is the next best thing. That being said, I mean, why are you still in the race, or what is your goal, and what do you say in terms of what you're hoping to accomplish, either in terms of winning? I'm curious what your path is, or what issues you'd like to raise.
No, you bet. And at the end of the day, I mean, it isn't going to be the debates that decide who our nominee is. It's always been the early states that take a big field and narrow it down. You can go back to John Kerry when he was running in 2004. He was at 4 points, 45 days out from the Iowa caucuses. He won that. That's what changed all the way along. So I have been spending a lot of time in Iowa. And Iowa's a state where a third of their counties voted Obama, Trump. They have rural areas where they're saying, look, we've got to find someone that can connect urban and rural. So I think it's no big surprise. I'm not the only one that recognizes that how you actually punch your ticket through this is doing fairly well in Iowa.
And does a centrist viewpoint punch through in Iowa? Because at the moment, some of the leading candidates, particularly in the Democrat field, they're not winning by being centrist.
No, yeah, and I'd love to think, look, if the core of the word progressive is progress, like I've made more progress than any of these senators when it comes to health care, when it comes to education, when it comes to kicking dark money out of our elections. Because as governor, you can't just give speeches, you have to get things done. But I think about 2 weeks ago, there's a big New York Times article. There was a big wake-up call for a lot of people. They said that when we actually look at those states where we need to win, it becomes a lot more difficult, so that we can have a diversity of opinions within the Democratic Party, but we have to find somebody that can win in those areas. And what I see time and time again, like be it in Iowa or other states, people aren't asking for everything free. Right? They're not asking for the complete disruption. What they want is a fair shot. They want to know that you work hard, you play by the rules, you actually have a shot at that American dream. And that's not always what is heard on the extremes of either party.
Well, so sort of right in the middle of what you're talking about is health care. This is obviously something that voters have sort of gravitated to as an issue in the midterm elections. Is probably going to be one of the main issues next November. How do you position yourself against an Elizabeth Warren or a Bernie Sanders who are basically saying, we're going to give you the whole hog when it comes to, Medicare for all or something like that? How do you address the health care needs if you're not prepared to go to the extremes that they're going
You bet. I mean, we need to make sure that everybody has affordable, accessible health care. And from my perspective, the way to do that is build on the Affordable Care Act, which was the biggest step that we'd taken in this country since Medicare.
Build on an Affordable Care Act that's been gutted down to almost nothing.
Well, look, Republicans have tried 70 times to gut it overall. The thought that we're still covered pre-existing conditions, still young folks can stay on, is still there for sure. Like, I would have a public option. It is insane to me that Costco can negotiate prescription drug prices. It's against the law for the federal government to do so. We need to deal with surprise medical billing, out-of-network charges, start changing the way that we pay. We compensate, fee for values, not just services. But the idea that what we're going to do is take away health care from 156 million people that have employer-sponsored care and say start all over. The idea that when the federal government spends $4 trillion all in, and that's for defense and everything, even if it only raises $3 trillion, that we'd add another $2.5 to $3 trillion every year for health care. I just don't think that's the best policy. It's also not the best politics, because if what we're talking about, like Hillary Care went nowhere because it's what was going to be taken away from you. When Newt Gingrich wanted to roll back Medicare, it's what's going to be taken away from you. If we go in saying we're going to take away health care from 156 million people on the promise of something that might be better,
right,
I don't think that dog will hunt.
News of the day or news of the week or month, impeachment. Should Trump be impeached?
I think that
Should he be and removed?
Well, I think the inquiry needs to go forward. We're all seeing exactly what he did. Like, I was not wasn't for impeachment until Ukraine. And I say that because even like 60 meet and greets throughout Iowa, folks talked about trade policies, the fact that the farmers are getting hit. They talked about worrying about losing a rural hospital. They weren't talking about impeachment. He needs to be removed either at the ballot box at the end of the day. I think that would still be the best way to go. But I think this proceeding has to go forward.
But do you think the impeachment then becomes sort of an impediment or a distraction to the election itself? I mean, you're trying to remove a president, rightly or wrongly, ahead of what is essentially the people's chance to do it themselves.
Yeah, and look, I don't know how it works politically, but I know and when this all came up with Ukraine,
right.
I mean, for the future of this republic, we have to move forward. We have to have expectations. We vest the President of the United States uniquely with the ability to actually speak to foreign countries and foreign powers. And if he's doing that to abuse, basically, his powers, if he's doing that for electoral purposes, not for the betterment of all Americans, it has to go forward.